When it comes to internet marketing and specifically copywriting and launching digital products, Mikhail is the guy. And I'm going to warn you, Mikhail is easily one of the smartest people I know. And some of what he is about to share with you today might go over your head. And if it does, I invite you to rewind and re-listen to it because he is a genius when it comes to this stuff. He has worked with industry leaders such as Tai Lopez, Jumpcut Academy, Real Social Dynamics, and countless others. And as of this episode, his products and campaigns have generated well over $25 million in revenue and continue to climb. He is now the founder and CEO at White Coda Inc, which is a full-stack marketing agency helping people find their passion, escape the 9-to-5, and live life on their terms. He is also the curator and chief content creator of Hustle System, which is a movement dedicated to supporting entrepreneurs across the world through exclusive content, mindset training, and unique mentorship opportunities. Overall, Mikhail is seriously a beast in the biz, and I'm so amped for you to meet him.
Mikhail, I'm so excited for this episode.
Me too.
Because I love, copywriting has a deep place in my heart too.
Wait, you got to tell me this. Tell me the story.
Yeah, hello. I write all my own copy, honey. Come on, I write copy for my clients. I learn it all from you. So for those of you listening, Mikhail is an insanely talented copywriter. So this episode, you're going to want to take a lot of notes. Make sure you have a pad and a paper and a pen.
Yes.
You know what I'm trying to say. And take lots of notes.
iPad. She means iPad with Apple Pencil.
Oh, no. See, that's another thing about Mikhail. I just toured his place, and he's got literally, how many monitors do you have?
I don't know. I use 13 actively.
13 monitors, computer monitors,
there's
guys.
More.
There's no one else that uses them but him.
Yeah, there's more. Well, I think it's like versatility, right? It's like as an entrepreneur, you wear all these different hats. And so sometimes the hats mesh together into one hat. And then you're like, why do I have to do operations and marketing and sales and customer support like all at once? So what I did in the office is I segmented all the different hats that I wear onto different computers. So when I wear the client fulfillment hat, I go to the client fulfillment computer.
That does something for you probably mindset wise too, like it creates separation.
Totally.
That's actually super, because one thing I found with productivity, for me at least, when I have all these windows open and I'm going back and forth between totally different things, I feel way less productive. So when you're on one computer, you're doing one thing. Is
Absolutely.
that what you're saying?
Correct, yeah. So I have one dedicated just for video, and that's got all the video stuff. I've got one just for graphics, that's just got all the graphic stuff. I've got just one for clients, and then one just for all my stuff, plus the ad campaigns and everything that I run.
Okay, so I'm aspiring to create the same thing for myself.
Yeah. Well, there's like the study, right, that every time you switch tasks, you lose 30%. So if you switch tasks, I think like 7 times or 8 times per day, your productivity goes from 100% down to something like 5%.
I believe that. So wow.
That's why I did it. I was like, okay, I got to segment. That way I can be the best and really, really do what I'm best at when I'm doing that thing instead of getting distracted by 50 other things. Like I put on the hat and I go, okay, for the next 2 hours, I'm wearing that hat. I'm going to lock in. Even if it's an operations thing, okay, you got to overhaul some ops stuff for your business. Cool, you're wearing the ops hat. You're not wearing the ops hat while checking campaigns, while writing copy, while answering emails. You're just doing that ops thing that you need to do, then you get it done and you move on. So.
And I feel like for copywriting, that's really important because when you're writing copy, it takes this is like you get into a flow state and you're just flowing. So if you're distracted by all these other things, your copy's probably not going to come out as powerful.
Yeah, totally. So I have a separate kit that I bring with me. So I have like the laptop plus iPad combo. So I have like it all set up and I have the laptop and iPad there on the desk. Mm-hmm. But then the best copy that I write, I usually will go for a drive and I'll dictate. So let's say I've got a client currently and it's in the spiritual space, right? And so to write in that headspace is very different from another client that I have in the investment banking space. Totally different mindset. Mm-hmm. And so the ability to switch and say, okay, hold on, I have to raise my vibration. I have to consciously raise my vibration or else I can't write this copy for this client. It's not going to work. It's not going to work from a goal-oriented headspace. It's just not going to resonate with the audience. It's not going to resonate with the client. And so oftentimes what I'll do is I'll go for a drive. I'll drive from here to like Malibu, which is about an hour, and I'll put the dictate an app on what I can dictate into as I'm driving, and I'll just dictate headline, hook, story, da-da-da, and I'll just dump a bunch of stuff on there.
Wow.
And then by the time that I get to the cafe, then I can go send that to myself as an email. I clean it up, and I already have something to start with. And that's something that I see a lot of people struggle with is those first few words on the page. They have a hard time getting those first few words out because they're so self-critical. So that's a really great like little productivity tip or workflow tip to kind of get yourself out of the funk. Go for a walk, go for a jog, go for a drive, what have you. Whatever that thing is where you find yourself free-flowing. Put yourself in that same environment, and then just have the copy be kind of something that you do in that environment. So,
and that's actually really, I've never even thought about doing that. I usually just sit on my computer and start typing, but it happens where you sit down, and sometimes it even gets hard to sit down and start typing because you're like, just the starting is the hardest part. So getting yourself in a flow state by just talking it out, and then you're dictating it and you transcribe it and you just edit it from there. That's the process you do?
Yeah, so I dictate straight to a transcribe app. So the app...
What do you use?
I think it's just Dictate. I used to use Dragon Dictate, but Dragon Dictate's the accuracy's gone down. And it uses up a lot of bandwidth. So if you're, for example, if you're driving down Sunset here in Malibu, there's a place where the Wi-Fi drops off. And so the Dictate drops off. And that was concerning when you're like in flow state. You're like, oh man, I'm going to do the close. And it's like, you're going to do this. And then you're going to take action. And there's a crossroads in your life. And you're like, you're in the flow state. And you're at that critical moment in your copy where you need to make something happen. And then like the Wi-Fi gets out. And you're like, oh, and I'm such an artist where like, I can't go back. Like I'll do copywriting sessions. And they're like, hey, can you repeat what you said 5 minutes ago? I'm like, I have no idea.
You got to record it all.
Yeah.
Okay. And have you heard of Rev Media?
Yeah, of course.
Have you used that? Do you recommend it?
Rev is great. Temi is great.
I love Rev.
Both.
Yeah, so for those of you listening, I think it's RevMedia, maybe.com, but if you just Google Rev Media, that's REV as in Victor, it's really great for a transcription tool. I think it's like $1 a minute or something.
It's awesome.
And it's really accurate because there's actually a human that's doing it. It's not.
Yeah, I find the best copy, so the best copywriters aren't writers at all. So there's these layers that you go through as you learn copy.
What do you mean by that? The best copywriters aren't writers at all?
The best copywriters aren't writers at all. What I mean by that is the best copywriters I know are editors. They're editors at heart. They are looking at flow. They are looking at pacing. They are looking at placement. They are looking at angle. They are looking at positioning. They are looking at branding. They're not necessarily writers because the best writers I know are broke. Like all the greatest writers that I know, they're like, I'm an amazing writer. And I'll read their stuff. I'm like, this has sophisticated words. This is like very eloquent. They're all broke because it's too high of a need. It's too high up the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Most people aren't there. And what I find, especially with interns or staff that I train, they try and do that with copy. They try and make it really, quote, beautiful copy. And I always pull them back from that because that's something that I started with. Like as an artist, I'm like, I'm going to make the best copy ever. And I write this thing that I think is going to be amazing. I get all excited. I'm like, oh, this is beautiful. Look at the imagery in this. And then it tanks, right? It bombs. It doesn't convert. Because the best copywriters are editors. And that's where the Dictate angle really approach really comes in. Because let's say you have 6,000, 8,000 words that you've dictated out. Now you go and you can look through that and go, wait a minute, okay, at around 3,000, we're talking about something here. There's a catalyst point. There's a central thesis here. That's what I've been trying to say. It took me 8,000 words to get that one idea out, and then you take that big idea, you extract it, and maybe you do a whole nother pass around that, but what you're doing is you're cleaning up. Very tidy, very precise. With every sentence, you should be able to say, what is the purpose of this sentence or this paragraph or this section? And I think it's where a lot of people struggle is they don't know the purpose of the copy they're writing and the intended outcome or result of it. So that's kind of what I mean by that. It doesn't mean that copywriters aren't amazing writers. They very often are, but the best of the best ascend beyond just writing and into thinking, how is this writing going to emotionally impact the person, and how do I make it accessible enough to where it even has the opportunity to make that impact? I think that's a big one. Yeah,
and I like that you have intentions or a purpose for each section. That's really important. So you're asking yourself, okay, I just wrote all this. What's the purpose? What's the intention of this?
Totally.
That's great. Okay, so I want to go into more tips from you because this is all gold. But I realize I want you to talk about your journey. So how did you get into copywriting? Like, what was that moment for you? Can you share that with us?
Yeah, sure. So those of you that don't know me, I'll do the 15-second first date life story thing that then leads to this point that people get the backstory. So I'm originally Russian, so I grew up in Russia, and at 8 years old, my mom came to my room and she's like, hey, you want to go on an adventure? And I'm like, heck yeah, I'm an 8-year-old kid. Of course I want to go on an adventure. I didn't know that adventure was going to end up in the United States, like permanently. So totally did not expect. I thought like we were going to like the park, you know. Like in my mind, and so I'm like, okay, well, this is totally new and crazy. So what that created is a very unique way of thinking about things. Of like, okay, like self-starter, you have to pave your own path. Nobody's going to do it for you. And then from there, I went and lived on the East Coast, lived on the West Coast, San Diego, etc. And when I came to LA, I had the pleasure of being introduced to Tai Lopez. So I'll kind of fast forward, through all the teenage angst and the punk rock and all that good stuff, straight to that point where my friend Ben at the time was Ty's brother, and so he's like, "Hey, you should meet Ty." And there was this moment where I had already been doing computer programming. I was already playing around with internet marketing, and Ty is obviously someone who's really figured out. He really doesn't get the credit he deserves, to be honest, for how smart the guy is. Like everybody just sees like the Lambo, the Rolls Royce, but like there's a backbone, a psychological backbone that he has that a lot of people will waver on. And he's like, no, I will not sacrifice these specific principles that I stand for. And so that was actually the moment where I realized, okay, hold on. There's something here in this space. What are the components that make this type of business work? This, lifestyle-oriented, entrepreneurial hustle, make money online, internet marketing, however you want to, whatever your label is for that. I consider it, having a company that works for you rather than you working for it, right? What are the components? And I realized that human psychology was the biggest aspect, the ability to understand. And, I'm going to use the words ethically manipulate on the podcast because I really think that is the actual appropriate label. And I think a lot of people would be like, oh, that dirty, like it has that M word in there, manipulate, dirty word. But I actually think it's important to use that word because as a copywriter, that's what you're doing. You are ethically, and that first word was really, really freaking important, ethically manipulating people to take a certain action.
What does that mean to you? Ethically manipulating.
Yeah, so the way I think of it is like if you're a doctor and you have the cure for cancer, right? It is actually your duty to get that cure into the hands of as many people as possible. So if you truly believe that your product or service is going to help people, now if you don't, and you have some product or service that you're not really truly leveraging, then don't do this. But if you truly, in your heart of hearts, want to deliver, are passionate about delivering, stand by your word, then what you should be doing is, it is literally your job. It is your mission
it's your duty.
To do whatever it takes. Whatever it takes, no holds barred, to get that cure into the hands of your potential clients. It is literally your job. Stop at nothing to do it. Go, to the like, look at like what Elon's doing with, because Elon's really trying to save the planet, right? He's like, look, like this whole carbon footprint thing's out of hand. Mm-hmm. So he is going to war. He's like, I will do whatever it takes. We will make Tesla work. We will make SolarCity work. We will make SpaceX work. And that is great copy, right? Having this really big mission statement and then synthesizing it into a deliverable. So what I realized was this ability to access human psychology and make an impact and make a shift and make a catalyst inside the mind of the human to trigger action. That was where the power. That was like the single point of catalyst in all of this internet marketing. Yeah, funnels are amazing. Email drip campaigns, automations, Facebook ads, YouTube ads, Instagram ads, content. I mean, you name it, right? Mm-hmm. The 75 or so things that you have to quote master. But the core was the psychology, and I was like, okay, well, how do you tap into that? Mm-hmm. And as soon as I realized, okay, hold on, copy, we use words internally, right? We wake up in the morning, we quote, feel a certain way, we label our own feelings. We've created this thing called the human language. I think it's fascinating that you and I can agree that like a table is a table or a laptop is a laptop. Like we take that so for granted, right?
I actually think about that all the time. Right? Yeah, it is. It's bizarre, but yes.
Yeah, totally. So we've created these anchors in our mind. And the way I think of it is every word is like a capsule. So like you take your vitamins in the morning, right? Every word you use is a little capsule. And you have to be very intentional about the words that you use. I mean, take a word like love. Ooh, that's a loaded capsule. That means a lot of different things for a lot of different people. Mm. And so when you start to use those things, you go and you start to ask yourself the question of, okay, what am I activating? What parts of the brain and psychology and maybe even the trauma and the vision and the dreams am I activating when I'm using these words? And so it was that moment when I realized that, okay, the key to tap into the human psychology is copy. And to write great copy, I think it was Jay Abraham. It's like enter the conversation that's already going on inside your prospect's mind, right? So you already get to go in and kind of inception yourself into their brain. And I just found that to be so freaking cool. I was like, okay, all right, this is cool. I get to rewire people's thought patterns. I get to go in there, like you can tell I'm pretty like OCD clean. So I get to go into like their messy room of their mind and go like, you don't need half this stuff, man. Get rid of all that baggage. Let's get rid of that. Let's clean this up and let's build you a castle. Let's build you a palace, a fortress, a amazing universe inside your mind. But you can't do that if you can't get in, right? If you can't the key. So there's all these, neuro-linguistic patterns we have and all this really advanced stuff that I can get into. But that was the moment. It's like I was sitting there with Tai. We were breaking down some sales letter. And I was like, oh, this is the Rubik's Cube to get inside the mind, this copywriting thing. Without it, it's like, what do you have? Like, you don't really have a way in. So that was the moment. I know that's a bit of a long-winded answer, but I think
and then from there, that's when you started your journey as a copywriter. Before then, you were dabbling in programming, internet marketing.
So I was doing some copy without realizing I was doing copy. You'll have it's only later you connect the dots. You're like, oh, that's what I was doing when I was doing that. You're playing around with it, but at the time you don't really understand what you're doing, right? Because you're kind of you're moving so fast and you're so young that you're so hungry to learn that you don't really care what the label is for what you're picking up. You just know you picked up something useful, right? It was almost like a hoarder mentality in a weird way.
Yeah, well, we're always so. I feel like one thing that we do to kind of box ourselves in as humans is we try to label everything. So words are powerful, and a lot of the times, like it's true. Like even with me, I find that sometimes I will try to label myself or put something I'm doing in a box, and I'm like, that doesn't quite fit. Okay, so one thing I want to touch in, because you said you're talking about these keys to enter in. So can you share with us the keys that you found to enter in through copywriting?
Totally. Okay, so I'm going to do kind of two angles for people to approach this. The first is actually understanding the filter. So I call this the filter of the mind that we have. And this is all of the preconceived experiences that the person that you're talking to has ever had. And we'll get into some specific ways to test the filter and stuff in a sec. But I think understanding that everybody has a filter with which they process the information that's being delivered. So again, I mentioned that word like love, right? For some person, that might mean great happiness. For somebody right next to them, it might mean great sadness and great pain, depending on where they are in their life. So really understanding the filter. Now, there's a lot of different ways to approach it without getting too technical. The way I always think of it is there's always a visualization component to whatever you're presenting. So there's always visualization, memorization, and then sometimes self-hypnosis through words. So take that word, right? Take the word love. You present that to somebody and they go, love, that feels good, but reference experience, but reference experience, but reference experience, self-hypnosis. So what you have is you have a preliminary anchor, right? And then you have several references that they're now referencing inside their mind, like a little filing cabinet. They're going, but this worked out well, this didn't work out well,
based
this worked
on
out well.
experiences they've had.
They're referencing that, and then through that, they're making a deduction, and it happens in a flash of a second, way faster than a single second. They make a deduction of a positive or negative or neutral reaction to that specific thing. And this might be a headline, right? This might be a headline of, the number one secret to achieving instantaneous happiness without having to, quote, work for it. Okay, well, what's the first thing? Skepticism, right? Skepticism, well, I've always had to work for, the things that I've gotten. Okay, well, so understanding the filter. Now, the way I think of the filter is, and I'll kind of try and walk the audience and you through how I think of the filter so that you can start to understand the way the human mind processes it. This is going to be one of those things that for some people it might be a little over their head, but I think if they can truly walk in here in this moment and really pay attention, it's gonna take their copy to the next level. This is one of those things that when I mastered it, it took my copy from being like an okay copywriter to now you give me any offer in any niche, I know I can crush that as long as I can, do that reset that I was talking about earlier. So
I'm excited.
Yeah. So the way I think of it is let's say you and I are throwing a party. Okay. Let's say we're throwing a party, and we have a friend named Jeff. Okay. So we have a friend named Jeff, and I go and I ask you, hey Ashley, should we invite Jeff to the party? Okay, so let's catch that moment. What is the first thing that happens in your mind?
I would probably think about my experiences with Jeff and like what my relationship is with him.
Okay, and even before that, you would actually scan through every single Jeff that you know, and you would make a deduction of which Jeff is Mikhail probably talking about? Is he talking? There's a 73% probability he's talking about this Jeff, but I could totally be talking about the Jeff that we don't know as well, right? So right away you have an assumptive autopilot that happens. That, for example, like you didn't quite catch it, and most people wouldn't quite catch it. This idea that you sift through every single possibility and you auto deduce the highest probability one. So actually right away, the person is making a guess. Right away, the person making a guess on whatever your copy is. And I think understanding that is really, really powerful. And then correct. The second thing is you go, okay, Jeff, I've identified the Jeff. Number two is let me reference the experiences that I have. And then you probably go through your memory banks of, let's say, 3 or 4 experiences that you've had with Jeff. And then what do you do?
And then I decide if it's a positive or negative experience.
Correct, on those experiences. And then what?
I feel like I'm taking a quiz.
Totally. Well, no, it's fascinating, right? Because this breaks down the filter of where most people's copy stops and why they don't get the delivery.
Well, then I decide how I'm going to, so whatever my decision is about positive or negative experience, then I would answer to you and think of, how am I going to express that to you?
Totally. Okay, so really close. One other step in there, though. You would actually, most of the time, future project in a visualization format,
imagine it.
Jeff at said party with other people.
Totally do that, yeah.
Totally do that, right? So you have, look at that. You have an identification component, right? Then followed by that, you have a memorization component where you pull from the memory bank. Followed by a future projection imagination component. You are literally manifesting a future reality in your mind with the hypothetical version of Jeff that you have now created as an avatar from your parent. Then you come back, you make a decision, and then you go into verbals, text and verbals to articulate that decision while still factoring in, let's say Jeff and I are really good buddies, factoring in the reactionary portion. So there's
so crazy that all that happens in literally less than a second.
In a flash, right? So, but if you take it and you break it down piece by piece, then that allows you to ask yourself, okay, hold on, I'm not getting through the filter. I'm not getting through the future projection. They're not doing any imagination. So I always try and trigger some sort of, immediate anchor, right? So easy, immediate anchor. So I simplify the process. I go, how can I simplify the process to take each one of those steps and simplify it so that I can better predict the outcome? It's just like in poker, right? If you have a certain hand and there's a certain amount of people at the table, a certain amount of cards, you can do predictive analysis on that and then give yourself an advantage. Same exact thing with copy, right? So that first anchor, I try and define that a bit better. That memorization component, I try and anchor them to very specific things in their memory. Remember the time when, right? And if it's a trauma thing, I go for the trauma thing. I go, listen, look back at all the trauma that you've associated with in your life from your childhood, from your parents that told you specific things that may or may not have been true because those are just their realities and their versions of their realities, to your teachers, to society, to this, to that. And I try and allow them, I guide them on the journey of painting that memorization picture. And then I future pace them and go, now imagine a future where all of that is wiped away, where you are that perfect version of yourself that you see, and understand that you don't need to work for it. You can simply choose to be that right now, right here in this moment. And so it's creative.
I love it. You're amazing. You are an artist of words.
Thanks. So that's kind of the way I do it.
One thing that what stuck out to me when you were just saying all that was you're really evoking.
Absolutely.
In your copy.
Absolutely.
And that's that for you to evoke in someone, you're speaking into basically the possibility that you see for them in a sense, right? Absolutely. And you're addressing everything that could be in the way.
Yeah, because imagine how awesome it's going to be when Jeff's at the party, right? So and you're like, yeah, I like this Jeff guy. I don't even, you know what I mean? So then you start to associate. You're like, man, I really want. We need to go find a friend named Jeff now and throw a party, right? It creates this really positive, kind of energetic capacity. I'm always trying to create a little battery for them to then unleash. So I'm saying here's the battery. There's all this energy that you weren't aware of, and it's in a little battery for you. All we got to do is we got to tap into it, and that creates a great potential for them. And one thing that I'll do as a quick tip, because that's a very advanced tip that I just gave, and I think some people might be like, whoa, I'm going to have to revisit this in a month. And please do, because that was the thing. That filter thing, I was like, oh, wait, people are remembering their past, and then they're visualizing their future, and then they're going into verbals, and they're using the vocabulary that they know to try and express themselves back. And that was powerful. And one easy way that you can test this is just just read your copy out loud to yourself. Like after you've written it, you'll be amazed. It sounds so obvious, but there's been so many times where I write this thing and I'm like, man, this reads like the best copy ever. And I literally go and I sit down and go, hold on, let me say it. And I start saying it and I just facepalm. I just do total facepalm. I'm like, wow, I can't believe I wrote that. Like, what was I thinking? Like, this is not great. This makes no sense. This just, not only is it not good, it literally makes no sense. Which is fascinating because our verbal language and our written language are so different. They're so linked, but they're so different, right? The way that we converse, there's mannerisms involved versus with written word. There's none of those mechanisms there to express yourself. So that's a really quick fire tip. Like, when you've written what you think is a great headline, read it back to yourself and then ask yourself, what filter goes off in your brain? Is it, skepticism? Is it that you can't remember a moment when XYZ happened, right? Imagine, remember when you got abducted by aliens? Everyone's like, no. I'm like, that's probably not a great headline, right? It's
actually true even with speaking. It's like when I write out, I'll write out scripts sometimes for speaking or whatever, and I'll go back through and I'll say it out loud and I'll start reading and I'm like, wait a second, no.
Totally.
Doesn't make sense at all.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes logical sense, but not emotional sense, right? Often.
Yeah. So, okay. I love this. I love all this juice you're giving us. So what is so now when we've gone through this filter, which is, you're right, it is very advanced and I think it takes practice. So those of you listening, when you go through this process, know that it's something that you will probably, it's like a new muscle. You'll be flexing and you'll be learning how to do this. And the more you do it, the better you'll be at it. But take yourself through that process because it's powerful. And so what about when you're structuring copy, when you're structuring sections, do you have a flow that you normally follow? Yes.
Okay. So this your audience is going to love. So I'm going to give you the philosophy behind the flow really quickly so you understand the macro. And then I'm going to give you some ideas for the flow. So the philosophy behind the flow, and this is exciting for me because I just changed it recently, and it's very rare that I have a monster breakthrough. But when I do, I get really excited about it. So I just recently, over the last 2 or 3 months, had a monster breakthrough with copy. And here's what I did. So my usual framework for the philosophy would be the pendulum. Emotion, logic, right? So with every piece of copy that you write, you're asking yourself, am I bringing them closer to an emotional decision or a logical justification? Or am I just moving the story along? Really, it should be one of those 3 things. And it was always one of those 3 things for me for about a decade. I mean, the decade that I've been writing copy, it's been emotion, logic. And literally, just in the last few months, I added a 3rd component. So if you imagine a pendulum swinging between 2 points, now it's kind of like a triangle. And that was flavor. Flavor.
Okay.
Yes. So this is cutting edge stuff. Okay. This is stuff that I think most people haven't tapped into yet. From what I'm seeing, the copy online, the content that people are doing, they haven't tapped into this yet. So this is cutting edge for your listeners. Flavor. So you have emotion, you have logic, and you have flavor. And let me ask you a question. What does it mean to write spicy copy? What is spicy copy? Or what about, a sour note on a paint stack? So I started thinking of these flavor tricks. So I started thinking about it, rather than just emotion, what emotion am I triggering, and solving a logical conundrum or objection, what is the flavor that they can sink their teeth into that, is a tangy headline? What is a tangy headline? My brain is still processing it. So that's the philosophy now. These 3 points. I'm always asking myself, okay, swing the pendulum towards emotion. That's towards a decision or a hook. Logical objection handling. And then flavor. What is the flavor in their mouth after they've read your copy or watched your piece of content? Now, as it relates to the section, so this, the reason why it's important to understand that philosophy is because it relates to how I structure the sections. Because one of the rules with that pendulum is if you swing too far into emotion, if I just go on this battle speech, you guys listen to this, you could write the greatest copy ever, you guys can do anything, all you gotta do is put your mind to it, it's gonna be awesome. There's a point where it's it's great, until it's okay, bro, can you give us...
Where are we going with this?
Can you give us some actionable, real stuff, right? So it's too far into emotion. Whereas if I talk robotically, now you have to understand that there's a blah, 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 and there's this many words, and you got to use these types of words. It's people just fall asleep, right? Because there's not enough emotion in there. And so the way I structure the sections. So I think of it as a Lego construction set. Okay? Those of you that have ever gotten a Lego construction set know you get this box of Legos, and then you get a little instruction manual. So the way I used to write was I would look at the instruction manual and I'd build the thing. I'd build the little, little castle or the little car or the little ship, and then I'd set it on my desk and I go, I know how to write a VSL. And then I'd get, the other construction set, and that would be the podcast, right? And then, okay, I know how to structure a podcast with intro, outro, etc. Okay, cool. And then webinar, okay. And then sales page, okay. And then Facebook ad, okay. And then, and eventually you have this shelf of all of these different pre-built constructor sets, right? That are, top converting, like industry leaders, really awesome stuff. But then there was a day, I think 5, 6, 7 years ago-ish, where I was like, screw this. This is not innovative. This is not what I stand for. And so what I did was I took all the Legos, put them all in one box, and I threw away the instructions. And so now the way I approach it is I know how to build, I know how to build the little car wheel, right? Or how to build the airplane wing, or how to build the castle tower. I know that part. Or if I want to rebuild a castle from scratch, I can do that from memory. But what I find much more fascinating is how can you create something new with these proven elements. So I've got about 75 elements. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I have 75 of these little elements that then you can sequence in specific orders to create different types of flows for different types of audiences, for different types of traffic sources, whether they're cold or warm. So I'll just do, I guess, one really common sequence. I'll give the most common one.
Okay.
And this one's used over and over again. And keep in mind, again, these pieces are modular. So you can take it, you can shift it around. I think it's important for people to understand that because it's so easy to give us the formula, and then everybody does the formula. And it's like, no, you gotta innovate on this thing. Don't just take what I give you, take it and run with it and do something. So obviously, hook to start is always great. Hook to personal story is tried and true, right? Hey, my name is Mikhail, and today I'm going to tell you how at 8 years old I became the adult in my life, and blah blah blah. Right? People kind of want to listen. And then if you're doing a product pitch, what you do is you take that personal journey and you evolve it into a product journey. So this is, and in my 20s, I would stay up late at night studying copywriting blogs and reading every book that there exists on copywriting. And so what you're doing as you're describing this product journey is you're actually subconsciously anchoring value to whatever your pitch is going to be later, because you're showing them how much work and effort and time you committed to creating this amazing thing that you did without naming the thing. So you shouldn't be naming and I've got a copywriting course for you right off the bat, right? But you go, look, clearly, become a master at XYZ, and this is what it took. This is what it took. It was these late nights, writing offer after offer after offer that didn't convert, that you think is going to do great, sitting there at 3 a.m, wanting to rip your hair out, going, why isn't this offer converting? And then having moments of breakthrough, and then channeling those into new stuff, pushing through just relentlessly, never stopping and doing that, right? So that gets you kind of bought in. So that's kind of the product journey.
And it's kind of the hero's journey too, because you're actually sharing from personal experience what you went through, which creates connection right away with the reader.
Absolutely, 100%. And then you have this pretty common element. I did a podcast with John Benson, and this is, John Benson was the creator of the video sales letter, great copywriter, world class. And he kind of came up with this concept, so I'll kind of pull from him and give him credit here, is this idea of a nightmare story followed by a moment of change followed by a dream story, right? So, I had this moment where, and I've talked about this openly on other podcasts, where I was super depressed, suicidal, was in my bathtub with a handgun, and was really surprised that I woke up the next day. And that's what I had. I woke up and I was kind of mad. I was kind of mad that I was still alive and had to deal with this world and all the challenges in this world. And then I looked around my apartment and I realized nobody lives like this. If you either choose to live and you choose to live a great life, or you don't. And so I had that moment. I chose to live a great life. And now I've got a pretty dang good life. I work from wherever I want. I bring my laptop. I can go to Miami or to Bali or wherever I want. Whatever, right? So that's kind of that nightmare story, moment of change, dream story, right? Ascension.
And I think the powerful part in that is everyone, even when you were sharing that, I was connecting to you because I had an experience like that. Even though it may not be the exact same experience, everyone's hit a low point at some point in their lives, and that immediately creates that connection. They see themselves in you. I saw myself in you.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So and again, this kind of relates to that emotion, right? That, it's got really powerful elements in it, because I could just give you the structure of hook, then da, but I'm trying to make the reader really understand why the pacing is a certain way, why the Jenga pieces are are put together the way that they're put together. And then after that, dream story, what you're doing in the dream story is you're really painting the perfect life for the avatar the best way that you can. So I mentioned, travel and lifestyle and whatever, wealth and blah, blah, blah.
Speaking into their possibilities.
Exactly. And so they begin to associate.
And imagine.
Exactly. Yeah. So now you're kind of using that filter to work for you, right? And they're remembering some of their past lives, just like you did there. Remember some of your dark past, and then you're able to future project yourself into a brighter future. And then there's a lot of different elements. I like the Kiki lock kind of element. So
Kiki lock.
Kiki lock. Yeah. So the idea with the Kiki lock is you have, at that point, they're looking for how they can replicate a similar thing or how they can contribute, reciprocity bias. Mm-hmm. So often by then you've actually done a little bit of a product journey and how you create this thing. So then what I'll do is I'll give them a key. And I'll give them the key for free. So I'll say, look, one of the critical components was this positive mindset stuff. Everybody talks about it, but there's a right and a wrong way to approach it. To approach positive mindset without action is worse than not approaching it at all. But approaching it with action, I found a way to synthesize the positive mindset plus the action to make that. So you give them the first key. And and then you hint at the second key. So you go, here's the first key, and I'll tell you the second key in a moment. But first, what I want to talk about is you. And so then I usually flip the script, and I go and I do a big mission statement. So I'll go, listen, that darkness that I went through and coming out of it, it made me realize that I'm on this earth for a reason, and that is blank. And that's a great, right? And that is like my mission statement right now is to help entrepreneurs all over the world deal with all the challenges of being an entrepreneur, from the psychological difficulties to all the skills you have to have. I mean, the amount of skills just between the off stuff, the accounting, the marketing, the product placement,
and creating harmony with all of it.
Creating harmony and not going insane and having. I think the hard one is the community, right? Because it's like some people are in the masterminds and some people will go to the conferences, but if you're not, you're kind of you're kind of isolated
and entrepreneur, we can do that sometimes. We'll lone wolf it.
Totally. I myself, I'm super guilty of that. Yeah, so it's like, scratch your own itch kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. So that's my big mission statement. And so whatever offer you're writing, if you don't have a big mission statement for it, the listener, you should go back and revisit, what is my big mission statement? Why am I doing this? Because you should be able to define it like that. And that should be something that resonates. It doesn't have to resonate with everybody, but with your subset niche, it should absolutely resonate. It could be building, the best Play-Doh schoolhouse. If you have a Play-Doh schoolhouse fan club, cool, they're all about that thing. Or it could be, a jewelry thing, or it could be a bigger mission statement, kind of like what we have, right? So, so I do this mission statement, and so what you've done is you've done the story, then you've given them some content, but not enough to fully unlock the lock. That's why I call it Kiki lock, because you're leaving a lock at the end of the table. You're leaving the solution to the big problem, because every market's saturated right now. And everybody's tried a laundry list of solutions, and those haven't always worked, right? So everybody's looking for that one solution that's going to work. But if you give them that right off the bat, people kind of tune out, I find. There's this idea of eliciting investment, right? And the top sales closers from the stage do this. You ever watch people close from the stage? They elicit so much investment from the crowd that by the time they do the pitch, it's a fanatical draw to that offering that people will, climb over each other and run to the back of the room. And I find that to be very powerful. So what you're eliciting there is this idea of this personal journey, this emotion, then this connection to a benefit in the future, and then you're tying it back to this mission statement. And from the mission statement, I will usually go into an avatar dimensionalization. So that's an avatar breakdown. My mission statement is, again, helping entrepreneurs. So it doesn't matter, and I'll just give you mine for it. It doesn't matter if you're a student and you're still a student and you just want to make sure that, that this thing that you're going into debt for is actually the thing you're supposed to be doing. We built this community so that you can do that reality check sooner, so that you don't end up with $150,000 in debt doing a job that you end up hating. I mean, I think that's a huge issue in our society currently, and it leaves people. I mean, look at just the happiness level, right? Good. So
you're speaking right to that. So do you create different pieces of copy targeted to different of the same flow, but then when you're addressing the person, you have multiple different?
So I do a generic to start with 3. So I always do a 3-way split to start. So my 3-way split for that one is entrepreneurs, business professionals, and students. So I go very wide on the first split. And then I see what resonates. And then depending on the traffic source that I'm running and the interest targeting and all of that stuff, Then I'll go and I'll do specific funnels for each one that's proven to convert already. So for example, a good example is in the financial space. We did an offer that was helping people get out of debt. But we found that people that are in debt are not very good buyers. Could have called that, but we still wanted to test it. We field tested that, but we found that, for example, institutional investors are very good buyers. So the answer is I would always recommend go broad first and then niche down, otherwise, especially if you're running traffic, because otherwise it's very easy to, but do it quickly. So the caveat here is go wide, shotgun, niche down, try and niche down within 4 to 7 days, 14 days tops. So you should be able to run enough traffic to that offer to be able to niche down.
Okay. So how do you decide what's enough traffic for you? What's a good sample size?
I like 50 conversions.
Okay.
So I like that 50 mark. If I can get 50 conversions within 4, 7, 14, then I usually go with that and go, okay, all right, we've tested it. There's calculators online for statistical significance of traffic flow that people can look up. It's basically a gibberish formula for most people. If you are good at math like I am, then I can explain it. But it's just look up statistical significance on funnel or on traffic, and then it will give you a formula for how much traffic you've sent, how many conversions you've gotten, and you'll hit a range of 96 to 98%. Once it's at that point, then I go and I say, okay, now we have enough data to actually make deductions on this. Let's go and look at this data now and see what is the data telling. I'm very data driven. I assume I kind of assume I'm a blank slate. I try to, because I find that whenever I go into the other realm of I am egotistical and I know everything, I always make mistakes. and then life reminds me that I'm not that cool. And then you're like, dude, you're cool, but come on, you're not God. And I'm like, yes, I am. I create my own reality. So it's a balance. Yeah. So I can keep going with the flow, but yeah.
That's a powerful way to do it. Testing data is key. And I've made the mistake before where I was basically I didn't test and I didn't create variations, and yeah. So it's very important to do that. If you're listening and you're running traffic to any of your offers, make sure that you're looking at that data. And I love that you shared the statistical significance. So they can probably just Google that and find those online. Cool. Okay. Well, we're nearing the end of the episode already, which is crazy.
Okay. All right.
But is there one? I know there's so much. I feel like there's so much, and I'm also going to make sure that everyone here goes and checks you out so they can find out more because you have so much more to give. Is there one final thing that you want our listeners to take from this, or one final tip you want to share?
Can I close out the flow very quickly in
Yes.
30 seconds? Okay, so because otherwise they're left with half a cookie. It's you got someone with half a cookie, and you're like, did you eat the other half of the cookie? And you're like, no, I didn't. So a really quick flow, right? So boom, mission statement, avatar dimensionalization. So this is for you. If this is this, you're connecting. Then what I do is I introduce. So I'll just do the short version. You introduce the offer. You say, here's what I've got for you. It's really exciting. Then you break down the offer. You do benefits first rather than features. I do benefits first. Then I do a call to action. Then I future pace. Before the future pace, I put a crossroad statement that says, look, the path that you take from here is going to be dependent on the actions you take right now. Right now, you define your own reality. Tomorrow, a month from now, a week, a year from now, you can find yourself here or here. So I future pace that. I really draw a strong distinction between the two. Then I tie it back to the mission statement. Then I give them a second key. I say, here's a second key you might not have overlooked. And to unlock the lock, basically, you're really going to have to get the program. And then I stack in social proof, authority, some objection handling. And I try and always tie it back to the mission statement. And then I almost always do what's called as a battle speech. A battle speech is if you're, it's like the Braveheart speech of we could do this together. All you gotta do is click the button. And people are like, well, I gotta click the button now. It's you gotta do it. So I just go full emotion, and then call to action, close. And then lately we've been doing a benefit testimonial stack. So we do a benefit, and then we do a testimonial that directly applies to that benefit. That's been working really, really well at the end. Yeah, so there's a lot more to it, but I just wanted to kind of put a bow on it. That way people at least have that.
And quick clarification, the keys.
Yes.
Those are giveaways?
Content pieces.
Okay.
So pieces of content. So I usually, there's a lot of different ways to do it. You can pull people, I recommend not pulling people off, if it's a webinar, for example, not pulling people off the webinar.
Got it.
But what you would do is you would say, look, the key to writing great copy. Number one, you have to understand the psychology of the prospect. Number two is you have to understand the pendulum between emotion and logic. But the third component, the most critical component, is what you're going to have to get the program for. So that's the general gist of how I position it. I don't do it that blatantly. I do it very subtly, but for the sake of time, that's the general gist. Is key, lock. So
Got it.
They have two keys they can.
So you're giving them something to nibble on.
Exactly.
And then if they want the full thing, that's the program or whatever the offer is.
Exactly.
Got it.
And then the one thing for people to take away, do you want this to be more marketing based or more life based?
Whatever's coming to you, this just gets to come from the heart.
Sure. Lock in what you stand for. Lock in your principles. I'll relate this to a personal story to wrap. I went through a pretty tough breakup about a year ago or so, and maybe a year and a half now. And what I realized during that breakup was, I'm a grown-ass man, but I do not know what it means to be a man. Like, at that point in time, about a year and a half ago, I realized I don't know what it means. Like, I don't know. And what I mean by that is, we know the labels, right? A man is supposed to be confident and strong and, a good provider. And, like, I understood the labels. Mm-hmm. I'm a good human. I understand the labels, but I didn't know what they meant. And so I'd like to leave the audience with a little exercise that I developed during that time. And this, a little hat goes off to Garrett J. White from Wake Up Warrior for a lot of the content I was going through at that time. But the exercise that I started doing was the I am exercise. And this is pretty common in self-development. People will do like, I am strong,
Affirmations.
I am confident. And those are great. It's a great place to start. But there was a piece missing for me. I was doing that. I was like, I am strong. And like, honestly, even as a strong ass dude. And
you're like, what does that mean?
It was worse. I wanted to cry. As I wrote it, I'm like, I am literally fooling myself into a false reality. And it came down to exactly what does that mean? It was, what is the action that I'm going to take? So what I'd like to leave the listener with is once per week, you don't have to do it once per day, but once per week, pick a word. I am confident. Okay. But then you're going to write that out. You're going to say, I am confident. But then you're going to write an action statement. When this happens, I do blank. It should be actionable. So, I am strong. I protect those that are weaker than I am. Period. That is it. So that is a thing, that is an actionable thing that you can do. And whether or not that actually means that you're strong or not is a different question. Mm-hmm. But at least it's a step in the right direction. I
like the when, I, then formula. That's nice. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and for example, I am vulnerable, right? When I don't want to say something, I open up and I say it anyway. And like once you've committed to it, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. But if you want to be that best version of yourself, and the reason why I say this is because this comes through your copy. This actually is going to make such a huge difference. So do the exercise once a week. Just pick a new word, go I am blank, and then put the actionable thing. When this, I do this. Put that down, and just that week, that's your thing. That's your thing. You don't even have to follow all the previous ones you did. Just try and follow that.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. So I am, kind. No matter what my mood is, I will be kind to others and treat them.
No matter what anyone else does.
Exactly. Yeah, I will treat them as the best versions of themselves that they can be, and try and help them get there. Right. Whatever that definition is for you, for who you want to be, define that better. And what's going to happen is your copy is actually going to go through the roof, because now you're writing from a much more grounded place, and every person reading or watching or listening to your content will be able to tell. So
I love it. Thank you, Mikhail. I really like that. All right. So where can they go to get more of you?
So first off, thanks for having me. You're a freaking rock star. You're kicking butt. I don't know a single girl that works as hard as this one does. You're like I'm just like hustling. I'm like, you're actually like on another level. It's super cool. It's super cool what you're bringing to the world. It's really unique. So mad props. And if they want to get a hold of me, at MVKBIZ on Instagram. That's Instagram at M like Mary, V like Victor, K like Kangaroo, B like Bob, I like Icarus. Biz. I like Icarus, Z like Zebra. Yeah, totally. And then we'll maybe include a link. I've got a mentoring program launching July 5th. If you listen to this after, we might still have it open. We will see. I'll include a link to that. And then we're doing an entrepreneur community too. known as Hustle System to help people that want to become entrepreneurs make it a little less lonely. It's backed by exclusive content. It's backed by Q&As, by mentors. It's a really cool thing. Nobody's really doing that. And that's my current mission statement. So that's how you do it.
I love it. Thank you so much, Mikhail. You're amazing.
You are amazing. Thanks for having me.